It's a party now because Asus is bringing their Panther Lake MiniPCs. Panther Lake MiniPCs. This is something a lot of you in the Level 1 audience have been super excited about, and I'm pleased to say that I've got the Asus NUC Pro 16 Panther Lake based. Let's take a closer look. Okay, the NUC 16 Pro. One of the cool things about these is that you can get them with Intel vPro. Like, this is an actual business class machine. vPro, Panther Lake. Panther Lake, strictly speaking, it's code name for the CPU. It is a mobile CPU. 16 cores, 16 threads. It's 4 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores, and 4 low power efficiency cores. So it's an interesting spread on cores. But the performance cores in Panther Lake are no joke. Panther Lake is probably one of the best CPUs that Intel has done in like 3 or 4 or 5 generations. Very power efficient, very fast for what it is. And also, this CPU has excellent built-in graphics. I mean, not that you're going to play games on this. We'll take a look at that in the benchmarks. But for business class machines, having a little bit of GPU acceleration can actually make a big difference. Your users will like when their programs run faster, drawing things. And, well, let's just face it, Adobe's really not doing any optimizations, even in like their PDF reader. Like the PDF reader, if you look at the GPU graph in Task Manager, it's not great. Okay, let's take a look at what we get in the box after we change our batteries. First off, the pricing apocalypse. Yeah, it's not great. These start at $700, and that is a bring your own RAM configuration. Now, there's several different versions of the Asus NUC Pro thanks to the Mempocalypse. Ours has built-in LPDDR5, but this is also available with DDR5 CSO DIMMs. So you can get a modular memory experience on this. The modular memory is going to be slower than the LPDDR5. LPDDR5 is better for your GPU experience. So we'll do a little bit of game testing in just a minute, and it's going to be a little bit better than our CSO DIMM experience. Upgradable or not may be important to you in terms of your procurement. So pay attention to whether or not you get the version that has upgradable memory or not. There's trade-offs. This configuration, 64 gigs of memory with 1 terabyte of storage. You can put 96 gigabytes of memory in these. Like, that's an official configuration. I noticed on the website. Probably 128 gigs works too. We could try that, but we'll see. Now in the box, you get the NUC itself, its power brick, and a power cord. It's a very small power brick. It's FSP. Good job, FSP. It is 19.5 volts, 7.7 amps. That's 150 watts. So bundled in the box, you get a 150 watt power supply. You also get mounting screws and M.2 accessories, as well as a VESA accessory plate. So monitors that have a VESA mount on the back. You can mount this PC to the back of the monitor and build an all-in-one PC, which is actually kind of a popular thing that businesses have started doing. I'm going to put that back in here for just a moment. We'll take a look at the port configuration. At the rear, we've got dual Intel 2.5 gigabit NICs. We've got 2 10 gigabit Type A ports, 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, and 2 HDMI. Yes, this does support 4 displays at once, 4 4K 60 displays. You can turn the Thunderbolt into DisplayPort, a USB-C to DP adapter. That'll work. And then you've got your power brick in. There's also a physical mount here. So there is an accessory that you can screw this into that and it'll do that. I did not see it in the box. So there is a little accessory in the box that screws in there, and then it will hold this cable to stop this cable from pulling out. At the front, we have a 10 gigabit USB-C port, which is also capable of 35 watt charging. And then we have 2 more 10 gigabit Type A ports and a power button. There's also a Kensington lock port on the side. Now, this mini PC does not have a built-in fingerprint reader or microphones, just FYI. I mean, let's face it, built-in microphones on a PC that's mounted on the back of the monitor, it's a little odd. Sometimes you take a look at these mini PCs, and there's no rear Type A ports anymore. They're all on the front or the sides. I like that you got 2 Type A ports. More Type A ports would be nice, but the fact this thing has 4, I'll take it. I also like that the monitor outs are labeled explicitly 1 and 2. Now, as I mentioned, this is the Core Ultra 9 358H that has Xe3 graphics, Intel's new built-in graphics. It's their first major graphics update. I mean, i9-15 was legendary, but i9-15's been around for like a decade. Xe3 Huge improvement in every way over built-in graphics. They're paving the way for built-in graphics to be something more than just basic graphics. Now, the internals for this are pretty slick. It's all about serviceability. There's a built-in M.2 heatsink, and when you open it up, the heatsink unapplies itself to the M.2. There's a single Gen 4 M.2 and a Gen 5 M.2. This is kind of weird because in some of the listings online, it says it's dual Gen 5 M.2, but the reality is that there's one Gen 5 and one Gen 4. Ours came equipped with a Samsung 1 terabyte NVMe business class, but still performance oriented. And then there is also a removable M.2 E-key Wi-Fi module. In our case, it's the Intel BE211 Wi-Fi 7, which has been useful for Wi-Fi testing across a whole bunch of different access points. Be sure to check out our coverage from there because we did Ingenious Netgear, Asus's BE8000, which did pretty good, and a bunch of other consumer, prosumer, tickling the enterprise wireless, like MLO, multi-link operations is just really what I'm chasing there. And Intel is definitely on top with the superior wireless solution in Wi-Fi 7. Internally, there is also a header for an RS-232 port, which I also mentioned, a front panel connection of some description. Apparently, there's an external PCIe header in here somewhere, or like for a PCIe accessory, but I couldn't find any information about that exactly online. And then there's also the little yellow jumper in the corner, which will let you clear the CMOS and do some other things. This is a hinged setup, so you don't have to unplug the fan or anything like that, or worry about stressing the fan cable when you open the bottom. If the thing is locked through the Kensington lock port, you will not be able to open, but otherwise it toollessly opens, which is nice, and you can do maintenance and servicing and whatever else you want to do on it. All right, this thing ships with Windows 11, so let's take a look at the software loadout and do some benchmarks. And then we'll come back for Linux support in just a minute. All right, so a quick BIOS tour of our Core Ultra 7 358H. It's all the stuff we've come to know and love from an Asus BIOS. Under Advanced, we've got Easy Flash Update. We can also do storage. Internally, there are two M.2 slots. I'll show you that in just a second. You can set them up in RAID 1 or RAID 0 for speed. Onboard devices, you can control LAN, secondary LAN, Thunderbolt support, WLAN, Bluetooth, internal PCIe connector. I think this might be the second M.2, but I'm not entirely sure because I don't see another connection really. You can also control the individual USB ports, enabling them and disabling them, or just whether or not they should supply power. You can also control the integrated graphics device, memory, and what the primary video port is. In hardware, you can also do left or right rotation. HDMI CEC control does work, and you can do from sleep, S4, S5, and boot to automatically turn on the display. Now, for me, this worked a little better on port 1 than port 2 using an HDMI connection to an LG display. But I have found firmware bugs in these LG displays before, so that could totally be an LG display thing. But when in doubt, use HDMI port 1. You can also wake on display, NUC on display, and you can also do standby on display. You do have processor controls. You can disable turbo boost. There's no legitimate reason you would ever want to do that. You can also disable the LP efficient cores. The LPE cores, those are low power. There are some Linux scenarios where it would make sense to actually disable the LP efficient cores. This was grayed out for me, and I'm not sure why. So I couldn't actually change it. There may be another dependent option that I would need to change. Memory, 64 gigs installed. Online, some listings say that this is DDR5. It is LP DDR5, and it is not modular. It's built in with the system. So you order it with 64 gigs. 64 gigs is what you get, and it's 8533. You can also control the button LED, power indicator, or hard drive activity indicator, or control by software. It also supports the absolute persistence module, which I've never used. I have not seen this in the field. This is a paid subscription thing, and there's more information at that QR code. Windows Update BIOS support. This means you can get your BIOS updates from Windows Update. Auto install app service mechanism. Toggle off. This is the auto run thing. It's interesting that business class machines don't install this. The Asus Armory Crate is the gamer equivalent. Wake from S4, S5. You can do a normal boot or you can do a network boot. Some people use that for network administration in lieu of vPro or other more elaborate configurations. For fault tolerance, you can do BIOS self-recovery, a fail-safe watchdog so that the system will reset itself if it doesn't, if there's certain anomalous things that occur. This is important for things like point-of-sale management, point-of-sale devices, which this thing also has support for an RS-232 port. There is an RS-232 header internally. can also do zero-touch UEFI management, which is not ready on this particular one that I have, but we can opt in for that. For power mode, it's balanced enabled. You can also do max performance. For our benchmarking, max performance is going to be set. After power failure, stay off, power on. This is really important to a lot of businesses. ERP ready is not checked because, California wants this, but no sane other person would actually want this. And then USB or S4, S5 power, so your USB ports can be on when the system is otherwise suspended, which some people like for charging devices or making sure that USB devices continue to receive power even when the system is asleep. Cooling will give you an idea of how the system is doing in terms of cooling. CPU temperature is currently 61 degrees. You can also get the exact voltage of the power brick. Also set that to custom. Security, UEFI, and all that as you would expect, and also boot. Now, it has two NVMe, so you can do a dual boot configuration between Windows and Linux, but, there you go. It's been a quick tour of the BIOS. Benchmarking, Panther Lake. I love Panther Lake. It's so cool. Look at that, 105 gigabytes per second. That makes sense. LPDDR5, not upgradable. It's kind of fast. Latency, 96.7 nanoseconds. It's pretty good. It's not the worst that we've seen from these mini PCs. And we've got some pretty good numbers coming in for our L1 through our L3 cache. Our Blender Classroom score, 69, okay. Cinebench, 1785 for single core, 20,702 for multi-core, all right. Geekbench, 2884 for single core, 16,579. Again, for Panther Lake Mini PC, this is pretty good. And just for giggles, let's try Shadow of the Tomb Raider on 1080p high, 70 FPS with 36 for our 1% lows. Not bad. I mean, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is an ancient title. You would be capable of playing some games on this. MOBAs, that sort of thing. It doesn't really make a huge difference from high to low because it's the round trip from the CPU to the memory, from the CPU to the memory. That is really what is limiting our frame rate here more than texture quality, because the textures are just going to live in the memory, and the GPU that's on the CPU, it's on the package, is doing the heavy lifting here. Real world, low, medium, low for your texture quality is going to be the sweet spot. Lowest, 99 FPS. You do see our 1% lows improving as the texture quality changes, but, it just depends. Lowest, 720p, 99 FPS is the most that you're going to get out of this. 1080p, low, 91 FPS. It's not a huge difference. Stepping down to 720p doesn't make it a bazillion FPS. You can get a reasonable 60-ish gaming experience from older AAA titles and newer, AA titles and indie titles. So not too bad. For Blender, also, I'll call out that this platform was able to sustain long Blender workloads. I mean, if you're doing long Blender workloads on a mini PC, we need to have a deeper conversation. Maybe that's, problems economically or otherwise, but it was able to sustain the cooling, and that's because it, pulls cool air in from the back and from the bottom. There's two fans here and exhausts hot air out the side. It's an interesting heat pipe design on Asus's website. You can check out a picture of that. It's effective. It's very effective at keeping this thing in check in terms of power. And remember, we set the performance profile in BIOS, so this is pretty solid performance for Panther Lake. What about Linux support? Well, I'm so glad you asked. We've installed Arch. No, I'm just kidding. Well, yeah, we tested Arch and Ubuntu 24.04 LTS. However, for the LTS version, you're going to want to install like the OEM-C kernel, which is newer. Like Panther Lake, for the best experience, especially for the Wi-Fi, kernel 7. You really want to use a distro based around kernel 7. Kernel 6.19 pretty much is okay. The thing you give up, or the thing that is a minor annoyance with kernel 6.19, is I don't think sleep and resume is working exactly perfectly correctly. For kernel 7.0 on both distros, Sleep Wake worked pretty consistently. Magic Packet worked pretty consistently, at least on the primary WAN. Remember, you got two Intel i226V NICs, so it's pretty good support. And our Wi-Fi worked great on kernel 7. So it really is a first-class Linux experience. I mean, even the B390 is very well supported in Linux. Intel's got their stuff together as far as drivers and everything else goes. So if you need mini PCs that are pretty amazing for this kind of stuff in a Linux scenario, these are going to do great. The only thing you're going to run into is that if you have an older kernel, it's not going to work as well. So if you're trying to support some ancient point of sale system on some ancient version of Linux, obviously don't do this. But Intel has been head of the class for kernel support for new platforms like Panther Lake. And you got to have that because you've got three kinds of cores here. You've got the performance cores and the efficiency cores. I mean, yeah, okay, that's been around for a few generations, but then you also have the low power efficiency cores. And those are really just good for background tasks, which is why you could, disable the low power efficiency cores. I think you can do that if you disable fast boot. I figured that out later. So if you disable fast boot, then you've got some more options in the BIOS. Like, let's just disable those low power E-cores. And you still got 12 cores and 12 threads to work with for performance cores. You really don't leave much on the table. It is nice to have those cores for background tasks, but you'll get the best experience with those cores when you're running a much more modern version of the Linux kernel. And, like thread director and all that kind of stuff is still a factor on the Windows side of things. Windows plumbing and the drivers and platform support is all there. But this really is a first-class MiniPC experience with Linux on this platform from Intel, like the new Panther Lake platform. This is a better out-of-the-box experience than probably at least the last generation, probably the last two. Lunar Lake got there. Like, Lunar Lake was pretty good. But out the gate, I think Intel was more concerned about what was happening on laptops, and then taking the chip and repurposing it for a MiniPC created another, set of, anybody that had, they're probably engaged below, and you'll see some of what I'm talking about, what I'm trying to convey from real world lived experiences with those older platforms. And this is my second or third Panther Lake machine. It's really my second Panther Lake mini PC for what could really be called a mini PC. But, Panther Lake and laptops has also been a first class experience with Linux, which has been fantastic. So bottom line, testing all this stuff and the little details and intricacies, it's great Linux support. Just try not to go older than kernel 6.19 if you can help it, and you'll be happier on kernel 7. So yeah, good job Intel. And good job for drivers and good video acceleration and nothing weird happening there. Whether you're using HDMI or DisplayPort over Thunderbolt, works pretty good. What about Thunderbolt in Linux? Let's add an RTX 6000. Yeah, look at that. It detected it perfectly. Came right up. It's a 20 gigabits both ways. 40 gigabit, that is what is expected. This is a Thunderbolt 5 enclosure, so it's just making sure we didn't get Thunderbolt 5 for free. If they wanted to add Thunderbolt 5 to this platform, it would require an external chip because Panther Lake doesn't have Thunderbolt 5 internally for power reasons. But yeah, it worked fine, and it was perfectly plug and play. Even in Linux. How about that? Isn't that exciting? Again, top shelf Linux experience. Good job, Team Intel. And I'm sure Asus had something to do with that too, so I'll take it. So benchmarks, Linux support, serviceability, toolless removal of M.2, access to the bottom. What's not to love? What's not to love is the RAM apocalypse and pricing around that. LPDDR5 is not modular. There are other options that will give you regular DDR5 instead of LPDDR5, so you could start with not a lot of memory now and upgrade later. And like I say, the entry-level price on these for $700 is a really good deal in the context of all the other suffering that you're going to be doing, but because the memory prices. But the configuration here, 64 gigabytes, is insanely expensive. And even though, it's 16 cores, 16 threads, but it's really 4 performance cores, 64 gigs, I think, is probably overkill for this configuration. I mean, it is 180 tops between the GPU and the NPU, and there is a lot of horsepower here, but 64 gigs is way too much memory, even 96 gigabytes for a configuration like this. It's also available with Core Ultra 9, as tested here. This is the Core Ultra 7 358H with the B390. The ARC graphics, the B390, is easily the most impressive part of the platform because it is nice having GPU acceleration in a lot of business apps. So power user, system, okay, yeah, probably pretty good. 16 gigs is really not enough. but RAM Apocalypse maybe changes that. 32 gigs, I think, is the sweet spot. You could push into 64 gigs if you could find a good deal, or maybe if the RAM prices start to come back down. But as configured, 64 gigs, I mean, it's tough to recommend the 64 gig configuration, even though it is LPDDR5, even though it is 8533, which is nice because it's fast, it's snappy. It's going to do a lot of fun things for you. You've only got 4 performance cores. It makes sense for a laptop chip. 6 performance cores might have been nicer in a mini PC that has 64 gigs of memory. But that's a you choice. If you do get 64 gigs of memory, you'll get a lot of benefits. Your applications will be faster because they'll launch things from RAM. You probably won't be able to, exhaust Chrome. You can have Chrome open with all the tabs you could possibly want between 32 and 64 gigs that, some of the end users can't tell the difference. You can kind of use these as like productivity workstations. Like some developers will use mini PCs for like their secondary, their testing PCs. And in those scenarios, it's nice to have a lot of RAM because you'll have a million things open. This thing also does surprisingly good with virtualization. So I tried to run some older VMs, older Linux virtual machines. And I figured with 4 performance cores, I would be able to show like catastrophic bad situations, but it actually did surprisingly well. And that is a scenario where 64 gigs would probably benefit you. But not a lot of time to get into that right now. This is just overall quick review. Let me know. If you're using a mini PC with 64 gigs of memory, tell me what's going on with that. That sounds like community engagement. I'd love to hear more about your fleet of mini PCs and how you use them and what you're doing with them. For people that are using mini PCs like this for point of sale and customer facing hospitality, it's all about vPro, HDMI, CEC. And honestly, a lot of those configurations, 16 gigabytes of memory is basically all they need. Maybe 32 if they stretch a little bit. It's not the more valuable workers, let's say, the workers that are earning more per hour. Then you start to get a little bit more interested in the 64 gig configurations. But engage below, you're running a fleet, you're managing things, you're struggling in this yet another unprecedented time. So let's hear from you and engage in the community. And then I can learn and live vicariously through your experiences, which is a lot of fun. How about this Level 1? I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums. Just a quick wrap up of the Asus NUC 16 Pro. Pro because vPro and business features and business warranty, that sort of stuff. All right, I'm signing out and I'll see you in the forum.